It's time. What's up, Reefer Revolutionaries? It's 420 in California. This is Reefer Revolution Live.
But I think in terms of marijuana, and legalization, I think that should be a state issue, state by state. I think it's up to the states, yeah. I'm a states person. I think it should be up to the states, absolutely. You know, I know people that are very, very sick, and for whatever reason, the marijuana really helps them.
Good people don't smoke marijuana.
Well, the good people at Medicinal Genomics are holding the biggest collection of cannabis researchers in the world this week. CannMed 2019 kicks off tonight in Pasadena, and your intrepid reporters will be there, as well as tomorrow and the day after, reporting from CannMed, getting those interviews, talking to researchers, talking to Dr. Biscuit, Dr. Mike, Dr. Barry. We're all going to be there. Meanwhile, we're going to get a banking vote, apparently, in the Senate because, you know, they want to make money, along with this guy.
This is the time to go all in on cannabis.
You know who else is all in on Bernie Sanders?
So, as for me and my stoner friends, we'll be buying Ben & Jerry's and voting for Bernard Sanders next year.
Do you want to say a word on this? Anything to add to what
I just want to say that's a real Green New Deal that we need right here. So listen, look.
So it's really clear to me that if I was black, there wouldn't have been a Ben & Jerry's. And I'm conscious of that. I think about that, and that's one of the big reasons why I'm supporting Bernie, because he's going to put an end to that system.
The war on drugs has been incredibly destructive for millions and millions of people in this country. And we're going to end that war on drugs, and we're going to make marijuana legal.
What's up, Reefer Revolutionaries? I'm Dave Conan. This is indeed Reefer Revolution Live, the show where we spark up, talk about marijuana in the mainstream media, the politics of pot, and cannabis care. And we got it all this week. And when I say we, of course, I mean my partner in all things life. And of course, in cannabis, Coach Chela. Sparking up with some Tahoe OG over there, Coach Chela, enjoying the combustion of some real flower, not that vape stuff. As you know,
but I had pasta last night.
Oh, but you had pasta last night, so that's that I'm sure is contributing drastically.
I get
to
real
the
phlegmy
phlegm
with
buildup.
the pasta. I get a lot of phlegm.
Listen, it's true. There is gluten sensitivity in this house. I can attest.
It's true.
But listen, those cannabinoids are protecting your lungs. So, and every time you do get a scan, they're like, "My God, your lungs are clear."
It's true.
What's up, everybody? Well, what are you guys smoking? We are indeed smoking some Tahoe OG, some lovely, always enjoyed Tahoe OG, one of my favorite strains.
That's why I got it.
Indeed. I grew some once. That was one of the plants I successfully grew a number of years ago was actually a Tahoe OG, and it was quite nice.
Nice. I think I'm going to abstain.
Take a little break right now.
Yeah, the coughing with the phlegm, it's just too much.
Well, you know,
but let me tell you, that pasta was out of this world.
It was really good. We ate at Moby's place, right? Little Pine or whatever.
Little Pine, it's a really great vegan place, and they don't have gluten-free pasta.
We didn't
Not
eat there, but we brought it here, so that was gluten-free. Yes, gluten-free pasta is a thing. It's true.
Amazing stuffed shells that were crazy delicious, but anyway.
It's not
now
always.
I have phlegm.
It's not always good, the gluten-free pasta, but there are brands and people that do make it well in restaurants and things.
It's true. The mac and cheese was gluten-free.
Listen, I'm super excited that Beyond Meat is going to be now. Is it Beyond? Yes.
This is not a vegan chat show.
Beyond Meat is going to be at Gelson's. I'll be able to go get it because it's only available in restaurants. So that's kind of cool. I'm going to stock up on that stuff. I enjoy that. I like that plant meat. I dig it. So, but this is not a specifically vegan cannabis show. This is cannabis, all things cannabis news, politics, cannabis care. We saw Bernie Sanders, Killer Mike,
Phil.
Bill,
Philip.
Ben Cohen,
and
Philip Agnew of Dream. Ooh, I should know the name of the organization, and I don't. I just learned it today, so. But I'll get it. But that when we play that video, we're going to play that entire segment in a little bit. Bernie Sanders at a town hall in Greensboro, North Carolina, at a church. And boy, was the reaction amazing. Dr. Cornel West and, of course, Danny Glover was there as well. But it was, you should watch the entire thing. But we're gonna get a little portion of it right after the news, or as part of the news when we get into the politics section. We're also going to talk about cannabis care today in a number of ways. We have a little preview for CannMed 2019. Chela got a great interview over the weekend previewing one of the amazing presenters at CannMed 2019. You want to tease that just a little bit, Chela?
Sure, yeah. Dr. Laszlo Mechtler is the medical director of the Dent Neurologic Institute in upstate New York. I believe it's Albany?
Amherst.
Amherst, thank you.
Amherst, New York.
It started with an A.
Yes. Close. It's in New York. You got the state right.
So Dr. Mechtler was, well, you'll hear in the interview, I don't want to give too much away, but he and his team have seen thousands and thousands of patients, and cannabis is medicine. And
he's the head of a neurological institute that takes cannabis medicine seriously.
Really seriously, yes. Very seriously.
Despite many other doctors.
Cannabis medicine doctor. We're excited to hear about his presentation is on a comparative study between Caucasian and African American medical cannabis patients. He noticed the disparity, and he is shining a light on it, and I love that.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, we're gonna get a great little preview interview of that. And if you can make it to CannMed, we know Dr. Barry and Dr. Mike may not be in the chat today. They may be traveling because they are coming out to CannMed, and we are going to catch up with them maybe tonight, but definitely tomorrow. We did somehow got invited to the reception tonight.
Yeah.
In Pasadena, so we're going.
Yeah.
It's
supposed to be for
reporters,
for all access pass holders or for vendors, and I'll take it. I'm going. I'm happy to be there.
Well, we do have official press passes, so
yes,
but we're definitely going. So we will check in from the reception tonight, and we'll be definitely checking in tomorrow as we record interviews from the CannMed itself. And Chela on Tuesday. So make sure you subscribe, get notifications to the channel. I think I'm going to be able to transmit I've figured out a way to, like, at least tonight for sure, it's going to go out over all of the multi-streaming. We, of course, multi-streaming on Facebook, Periscope, Twitch, DLive, and, of course, here on YouTube, we would do most of our engagement in the chat. Welcome, everybody, in the chat. Jilly Love is in there. MDM Niles, Blaster Master. Happy birthday to the humble Canadian.
Whoop, whoop.
Big 51 today. It's all ease and flow from here, my friend.
That's a good wish.
One could say all downhill. One could say going with the flow, going with the path of least resistance. It tends to get easier as you get older, I find. But happy birthday to you, humble Canadian. We've got Blaster Master, did I say? Small Tubes jumped in first. And Mike 88 is in the house. We've got, did I say MDM Niles? And who else? Oh, yes, Gromy Homies jumped in top of the show. Welcome, Gromy Homies, as well as Small Tube. So welcome, everybody, to the show. Subscribe, get notifications. We have an awesome dedicated live chat on Sundays, and everybody jumping in early tonight. It's like they almost know we are going to be jetting out. We're going to do a full hour show today. And then the afterburn will be delayed, if not postponed this evening, as we check in from the reception for CannMed 2019 in Pasadena. We are going to be checking out in throughout the evening from that event, and then come back and get ready to cover it as journalists tomorrow. So, subscribe and get notifications. And before I do get into the news, I wanted something just dropped today. We had the real pleasure yesterday we did that yesterday, right? Yeah, that was yesterday. Thank you for turnaround. It's amazing on this. But we had the real pleasure yesterday of being on the Plebbies Project. For those of you who don't know what the Plebbies Project is, you should.
Especially you political people.
Yes, especially you political people. It is a great Charles Clark doing great independent journalism over at the Plebbies Project podcast and YouTube channel. We'll drop the link in. That's not it. It started playing something. There it is. And there we are. Look at that. We are on an episode of the Plebbies Project from our humble little cabin here, talking about the show and medicinal cannabis and the politics of pot. And there's going to be more to come on the Plebbies Project. Charles, we had a great time talking with him. We really hit it off. So we hope to do regular updates over there. So make sure you follow him and subscribe on Twitter. Follow on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube to the Plebbies Project, and check out our 3 segments that we did just yesterday on the show and how it became and why we do it. And it was fun, and we're going to be more of that. So that was cool. So thank you so much, Charles, for inviting us. That was fun, right, Chela? We had a good time?
Yeah, it was good. Totally good.
It was a blast.
I think you should get into the news, or else we're going to run out of time.
We are on a tight schedule, and as you know, that is tough for me.
Go on. Go start talking about the politics.
We found that problem yesterday on the project. Go on now.
Blah,
Go
blah,
on.
blah, blah.
All right, CannMed, we're going to talk a little bit about that before the preview. Later. Okay. But wait, it's true. The banking bill is coming up for a vote next week, guys. Kyle Yeager reporting over at Marijuana Moment. House marijuana banking vote officially scheduled for next week. Leadership announces. Now, this is sort of at the reluctance of several organizations and the leader of the Democrats in the Senate. Chuck Schumer, hesitant about banking reform, the banking bill, to allow cannabis businesses access to the banking system so they can actually pay taxes and not have to carry cash into the bank every week. But their concern is warranted. It's, we do need broader cannabis reform. It's true. And as we said on the show, this banking bill, and the only reason it's moving through is all about the adult use market, really. It's broader, of course. It's the entire industry. But having the banks having access to this billion, maybe $1 trillion new business that they are missing out on every week, every day. So we knew this was one of the maybe standalone bills or isolated bills that were going to make its way through. And it has been. It has been making its way through. And now some organizations are trying to throw the brakes on it because of the need for broader reform. We have the top Senate Democrat calling for that. But this is going to get a floor vote, if for no other reason that it's not going to go anywhere necessarily in the Senate, although it may under the Republicans. It's quite possible that the Senate Republicans will bring this banking bill up for at least a committee. They've hinted that it will go into committee, and they will bring it forward. So another irony, perhaps, that some form of cannabis reform may go forward more with a push of Republicans than Democrats, certainly in the Senate. Of course, it's quite, these votes have been sort of split in the House as far as pushing some of these through committee. But we'll see. This vote is coming. It's next Friday coming up. The vote will happen on the floor. So keep an eye out for that. And, of course, Marijuana Moment will be breaking that news. And if you do want to catch the breaking news that I do find during the week, so when that does happen, you can follow me over on Twitter at DC420LA. And you can also sign up for a Cannabis Chronicle at DC420LA.com, which is where we put the news that we talk about during the show. So we've got the banking issue coming through. We've got bipartisan lawmakers wanting to cash in on the hemp CBD action, and we're going to get those rules. They're pushing the FDA. The FDA has promised earlier, denied they could do anything for years, then came up and said in early fall, we're going to have rules for the CBD, specifically from hemp. And now we're getting, continued pushes from lawmakers saying we need those rules. We need those rules because the big boom really is they're looking at is CBD. Certainly for the hemp industry, initially. They're not going to. Yes, go ahead.
This week at the Cannabis World Congress, which is also this week.
Oh, that's right. It is a pretty big week this week for cannabis conferences in the LA area, isn't it?
Huge.
Yeah,
really, really huge.
And next week. It continues into next week.
Yes. But this week, at the end of the week, the Cannabis World Congress is going to be covering a lot of hemp stuff, and CBD from hemp versus CBD from cannabis. It's going to be a very, very interesting conference as well.
Yeah, then there'll be, I'm sure, these issues, the FDA are all on the docket for that, for panels, because it's on everybody's mind. This is where the money in hemp is right now. We don't have the infrastructure for the fiber like they do in Canada and other in Europe and in China, where a lot of this CBD that's at least online, Amazon or elsewhere, along with all these other garbage stuff being sold online, fake stuff. The CBD even isolates, from hemp outside of the United States. If it's not from good medicinal hemp, there's a difference. Between the types of hemp and how to grow it, the different cultivars and how they grow and how, that's those sticky resins with all the medicinal properties, even in that 0.3 THC hemp is where the good stuff come from. And there is an article this week in the Chronicle that does ask that question. Fresh Toast, of course, writing in more mainstream journals as well, being picked up by the main Washington Post, I believe they are contributing to Fresh Toast, the story there and here. Which to choose? Pure CBD extracts or cannabis-derived CBD with some THC? Well, that's the isolate versus full spectrum, conversation, and we know how we feel about that, right, Chela?
For those new to the chat or to the show, we are not fans of isolate.
No, we're not. Now, there are definitely procedures that you can do to remove all of the THC without creating, a CBD isolate and keeping it full spectrum with all the other cannabinoids and terpenes and flavonoids intact, and you don't have to necessarily pull the molecule out. Well, I think we're going to hear a lot about this this week or tomorrow, starting tomorrow at CannMed, because one of the big movers in the big pharma and cannabis it's happening in Israel. And they are doing a lot of work with the isolation of molecules to fit into the standard medicinal model that that these companies are trying to get into, and don't be fooled. It is big pharma push to isolate these chemicals, isolate these molecules, and put them into a pill that that is going to be completely the same all the time. The variance in cannabis plant is the problem. If I'm not incorrect on that. Although it was fine for hundreds of years until they invented the syringe, and then all of a sudden now it became more about the molecule, the isolated molecule in drugs, than it was about plant medicine. And we're starting to see a resurgence in that. With a lot of studies now going to be coming out, and we're going to get more and more, I'm sure, because of the minor tightening or loosening of the grip of the DEA, looking for more cannabis to study, promising to release more licenses to grow real cannabis for study. There are a number of Chela, there are more cannabis drugs in the pipeline right now than there are Alzheimer's drugs.
I don't doubt it.
I just saw a chart today that
cannabis drugs work.
It's there's an article this month, Visual Capitalist, the big pharma takeover of medical cannabis, and they show the number of drugs that are in the number of cannabinoid clinical trials registered with the FDA by company. GW Pharmaceuticals has 40, Sanofi has 38, GW Research 8, Solvay Pharmaceuticals 75443221111. So there's over 70, that's 80. There's over almost 90 cannabinoid clinical trials registered with the FDA. And there are less than 70 Alzheimer's drugs currently in the pipeline with all the poison chemicals.
Soon they'll figure out that cannabis is the medicine for Alzheimer's, and then it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
And
as long as we have room for everybody at the cannabis table, we're good. I think there is space for big pharma. I think there's space for tinctures and homemade stuff and everywhere in between. And I think that that's how cannabis should be. Should be as good as tomatoes, you know, or other medicinal herbs, you know, as easy as other medicinal herbs that other medicines are made from, you know?
Well, you know, where the psychedelic renaissance is happening. And, you know, we believe in plant medicine, medicine from the earth, in food, as well as fungus, and flour. That's what we like.
Mm-hmm.
That's the road to health.
With that, but some people aren't comfortable with that, and whatever. Everybody has their own path.
Mm-hmm.
I, like you, of course, believe that that is the road to health and food and prevention and all that stuff. But some people aren't like that, and that's cool. Let big pharma have a piece of it, as long as we can retain the piece that we like.
Well, that'd be nice, because no home grow, no go.
That's right.
Because big pharma and big cannabis, corporate cannabis, doesn't want you growing your medicine or your recreation.
No.
Neither do a lot of people.
No. Hey, keep an eye on the time.
Keeping an eye on the time. We're going to talk a little politics now before we get into some more cannabis care. Let's get into the Bernie stuff this week. Pretty much.
Oh yeah, you better get in there.
I better get in there and play that, because this article, Kyle Yeager, Bernie Sanders talks marijuana with Killer Mike and Ben & Jerry's founder, Ben Cohen. Danny Glover also on that panel, as well as why do I keep blanking on his name?
Phil Astor? No. Philip? No.
Agnew is his last name. Philip Agnew. That's
Philip Agnew.
I don't know. He doesn't look like a Philip Agnew to me, I guess.
Yeah, the
well.
Agnew is definitely throwing
but let's take a look at this video from this town hall that happened in Greensboro, North Carolina. And Killer Mike had some very interesting things to say, as did everyone else on this particular panel at this event. So let's take a quick look at that, and then we'll come back on the other side.
All right. Let me throw it out to Mike. An issue that I've been running up against and seeing a little bit more, and that is the impact of the war on drugs in general, and the African American community in particular. Thoughts?
The war on drugs, we now know from history, has been a tremendous failure. It was never a war on drugs. It was a war on progressive white kids and black people, ordered by Richard Nixon. It was from marijuana laws in 1937 that were put in place under the guise of marijuana makes black men ravenous rapists of white women, and from it got people in jazz clubs that were not supposed to be together. We know that race and poverty have been used through the war on drugs to continue to separate people and to use slave labor, because essentially slavery is illegal unless you're a prisoner. And we know that we have fed both public and private prison systems by delivering young people, black and other people of color, and poor white people because of the war on drugs. And what we now know is we get a do-over. And the do-over says that we now know from the crack era that the opium epidemic that's coming down is a health crisis. So we don't have to throw thousands of people with addictions in jail. But we have a greater opportunity. And the greater opportunity is this. Marijuana is going to be legal in our lifetime. And beyond getting a little stoned in the morning, which I didn't do this morning because I knew I had to come see you guys. Marijuana provides through hemp paper, alternative to plastics. It provides jobs through foreman and resources, dispensaries, and what I would like to see, and I know what Senator Sanders can do, is not only take marijuana off the Schedule I list. I know that not only can we expunge the records of prisoners who are getting out, we can create based on history, because after we deprohibited alcohol, blacks were locked out of that industry. Even though it was their music and their clubs a lot of times that fueled corn whiskey. A lot of y'all know what corn liquor is, right? We have an opportunity this time to take the people that are exiting jail, have expunged records, and creating a pathway as wide as this aisle directly into legal marijuana and creating economic sustainability in the same communities that were robbed of that opportunity. So, as for me and my stoner friends, we'll be buying Ben & Jerry's and voting for Bernard Sanders next year.
Phil, do you want to say a word on this? Anything to add to what
I just want to say that's a real Green New Deal that we need right here. So listen, look, but we are in a church of a place of worship. So listen, the only thing that I want to add, Senator, is that we cannot divorce the war on drugs and the fusion of crack cocaine in our communities from the movements that started from those communities, right? There were movements 40 and 50 years ago in Chicago, right, with black people, white people across race, gender, class, that had built strong infrastructures, right, that had organized communities across all dividers, right? And then we have this crack epidemic. And so what we're talking about now, right, is repairing the wrongs that were done on our communities. And we have a senator who's going to be the president who is saying that who is saying that we're not only going to repair the wrongs of the war on drugs, but we are going to bring back an era that we are organizing in our communities. We're not just coming and knocking on doors and saying we want your vote every 4 years, but we are building an infrastructure for people to take the agency in their lives. We are suffering as animals now, and we are saying you will be a human being in the way forward. And so that is the magic of what we're talking about now.
Thank you, Philip. Now, Ben, this one I know you do have some experience with.
You know, my parents were working class, and they were living in New York City, and they were able to buy a house based on a government program for low-interest mortgages that black people were not eligible for. And that is what created the somewhat of the wealth in my family that enabled them to move into the middle class and for me to get a decent education. In the midst of getting my higher education, one summer I was smoking some pot with some friends on a beach, and the cops caught us. And we were handcuffed, and they took us to the station, and they ended up giving us a ticket for littering a lighted cigarette butt on the ground. But I am well aware that if I was black, I would have ended up with a criminal record that would have prevented me from getting the loans that we needed to start Ben & Jerry's. And so it's really clear to me that if I was black, there wouldn't have been a Ben & Jerry's. And I'm conscious of that. I think about that, and that's one of the big reasons why I'm supporting Bernie, because he's going to put an end to that system.
We're going to go on to the next panel in a second, but before I do that, I want to ask you a question which I've been asking around the country. Be honest, give me your answer. How many people here know somebody or yourselves have been arrested for possession of marijuana? Raise your hand. Yeah, this is an astounding... This is what the war on drugs has done in this country. Has criminalized so many people in this room. This is amazing. And this is what, we were just earlier today at a barbershop, and we heard stories of people who, for whatever reason, were arrested when they were young. And sometimes when you get arrested when you're young and you got a criminal record, you don't end up to be, Ben Cohen and start Ben and Jerry's. You end up on the wrong side, and you end up in jail and in and out of jail for your whole entire life because you can't get a job, you can't go to college, you can't get decent housing. The war on drugs has been incredibly destructive for millions and millions of people in this country. And we're going to end that war on drugs, and we're going to make marijuana legal.
All right. We're going to go to our second panel.
Oop. Not ready for that. Little soon for that. Hold on, wait a minute. All right, stay there.
A little premature.
So there we go. That was Bernie Sanders at the Greensboro, North Carolina Town Hall. Bennett College, I think, is where it's at.
Yep.
And those guys are all in. It certainly sees. And Killer Mike and his crew, stoners, in on Bernard and Ben and Jerry's ice cream. So that's pretty good. The energy in that room. He said on Joe Rogan, we played it. He plans on doing executive ordering that shit.
Yep.
When he gets in to deschedule, which we've been told is not possible. But hey, anything is possible, I suppose, in this day and age. Which leads us to the conversation as to whether or not someone else may take advantage of that idea and take that issue away from every Democratic candidate except for Joe Biden, who still thinks it should be a misdemeanor. But people shouldn't have it on their record after they're out, I guess. It's his thing. I don't know. Whatever. We are seeing an expansion from the other candidates, the lower tier candidates, trying to make a name for themselves, maybe reach in, expand their. Beto wants to decriminalize, I believe, opioids. Is that what he said? And the Yang is also on board that. And the Yang, I think, wants to decriminalize black market opioids. I guess it's okay, but not. Heroin should be decriminalized. I know Bernie is not on board that. So. There's some evolution that needs to go on there with the drug war. I think the Uruguay model, as Yang's, said on the Crystal Ball interview, which is a really good interview. But this is all posturing and trying to get delegates,
keep an eye on the time,
gather some delegates, and use this issue of really cannabis as a major platform issue for 2020. It was in 2018.
Wouldn't it be funny if 45 just did it before 2020?
Wouldn't it be funny? Listen, it's on, and guess what? You know why it would be funny and not a good way? It would be funny because it's on going to be on every ballot in every state, including North Dakota and Wisconsin. Cannabis Sativa just did a great, hey, there you are.
Yep.
Cannabis Sativa just did a great commentary on the Wisconsin, I believe you did, right, bro? It was Wisconsin you were talking about. You do great commentary on all the stuff around the states, but we do have a move in Wisconsin. So it's going to be, recreational is going to be on the ballot in Florida, as we've discussed with the doctors, the good doctors. big doctors down in Florida,
Uh-huh.
and others, and what we're going to talk about probably continuing as it moves from state to state. So cannabis is politics. If you're not involved, and if you're involved in cannabis in any way or support cannabis legalization, decriminalization, rescheduling, descheduling, the freedom, the liberty to use it and grow it in your backyard or your living room.
Then you have to be involved in politics.
Exactly.
Like send postcards to your elected officials.
Woo-hoo.
Hey, you guys remember the postcard?
We've got new postcards.
We got postcards again. We're super excited. Super excited. I changed the color on them.
Mm-hmm.
More than 100 Americans die every day from an opioid overdose. Cannabis can combat the opioid crisis. In states where cannabis is legal, opioid use decreases significantly. Nobody has ever died from a cannabis overdose. It's time to deschedule cannabis. You guys might remember from the first printing, all those cannabises were marijuana because the lexicon was different then. Now it's everybody knows what cannabis is. Everybody knows cannabis is marijuana.
We grow too.
So that's pretty exciting. Hey, I wanted to talk about a couple things before we move on to Dr. Mechtler.
In the articles.
Yes.
Before we move on, I just want to say Dream Defenders is Philip Agnew's organization, who made the Green New Deal comment, the real Green New Deal, with giving opportunity back to the folks that have been so harmed by the drug war. And it's an amazing organization, Dream Defenders. Check them out. Of course, Killer Mike and Ben Cohen, Ben and Jerry's, supporting the next president of the United States. I mean, you feel the energy. You feel like we're going to win. You just feel it. And they're going to try to screw us, but okay. We're not. No, erase.
Listen,
17 seconds. Erase.
We have 4 minutes.
4 minutes. Quick, talk about it.
Please talk about my things.
Yes, go
Thank
baby.
you.
Talk. Which one do you want to talk about first?
I want to talk about all of them.
All of them. All right.
So if you'll look at the bottom left column of the Cannabis Chronicle, which you will find at dc420la.com. What is medical marijuana and facts you need to know? That was in the AARP magazine. Some of you might get the AARP magazine. Tell me in the chat if any of you do get the AARP magazine and if you noticed that the whole thing is all about cannabis.
How come I didn't get my AARP magazine?
I think somebody's filtering our mail.
Oh.
But you would think that they would think that we would want that piece of mail. Anyway,
it's the
Forbes article, you can bring up the Forbes article. Abby Rosner, who writes many things I would like to write myself, in Forbes, she writes about all the cool old people pieces. Alzheimer's pieces were written by her. She noticed that the AARP magazine was full of medical marijuana. So she writes about that in Forbes, and it's sort of a big deal that the official stance that the AARP has taken is to be cool with cannabis. The quote is, AARP also supports further clinical research of medical use of cannabinoids to help alleviate both the symptoms of disease and the side effects of the treatment for diseases. The policy adds that AARP believes the DEA's classification of marijuana as a Schedule I controlled substance deters the medical use and scientific study of cannabinoids and calls on federal officials to examine options to allow more clinical research. Yes, people, it's happening. It's happening. It's really happening.
September, the month that the AARP took marijuana mainstream to seniors.
It's a big deal. And then there's another cool story. Leafly has a sweet story about how to talk to your grandparents about cannabis, but it looks like they're going to be talking to you since they get the AARP magazine.
That's right. They're going to start bringing it up.
Totally.
So you better be ready to take them to the right dispensary. Tell them about start low, go slow.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go too crazy with the edibles.
Yep. Don't. The Arizona story that is in the Chronicle also is very interesting because they actually name that Alzheimer's is one of the diseases that can be treated with medical cannabis.
And is that a new addition to their list, or is that?
It's just they were reviewing the list of all the things. It's not a new addition. It's just the part of it. But very few media stories name Alzheimer's. They might say neurological conditions. Very few of them say the word Alzheimer's. And I think that that's a testament to how strong the grip of pharma and the Alzheimer's Association is on the zeitgeist.
Indeed.
So that's those were my favorite things about the Cannabis Chronicle this week. I like these fun little stories also. I love the Cannabis Lounge tours land in Los Angeles. That was from the LA Cannabis News, who I'm going to meet next week at the Cannabis World Congress. I'm excited to meet them and connect with other local cannabis media. And I like that the Press Herald, Maine, this Maine Press Herald story, making cannabis edibles at home. It's just another cool thing to talk about. I love that.
Well, apparently I've reached my limit at the Herald, but
it's all right. It's 5 o'clock. It's time.
It's time.
So we are going to CannMed, you guys. We're very excited. Our first CannMed event is this evening. That's why we're moving right along. And I got the excellent chance on Friday to interview Dr. Laszlo Mechtler, who is the medical director at the Dent Neurologic Institute. And, well, without further ado, how about we go right into the interview? Is that cool?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, cool.
And because we are moving right along, let's play this great interview that Chela got yesterday with Dr. Mechtler.
And that has been...
Dr. Mechtler, thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Mechtler is the medical director of the Dent Institute, Dent Neurologic Institute, Dent Headache Center, and Cannabis Clinic. You're also the professor of neurology and oncology at SUNY Buffalo and the chief of Neuro-Oncology at Roswell Park Cancer Institute. And you're presenting at CannMed next week, and we're so excited about your presentation. I'm so glad we like to cover the intersection of cannabis medicine and social movements and politics. So we're really excited about your presentation, a comparative study on the use of medical cannabis in the Caucasian and African American populations.
Yes, it's
a little preview.
Yeah, you know, I started this cannabis program when it was legalized. Medical marijuana was legalized in February of 2016 in New York State. And, you know, I started off as a typical professor of neurology, rather skeptic, not knowledgeable, uneducated. But I was receiving 500 phone calls a day from patients. Just a little background, I'm the director of the largest neuroscience center in the country, where we see about 1,000 patients every day in this neurological institute. So as I was receiving phone calls, I said to my staff, you know what, we got to do something, because initially in New York State, 7 out of the 10 indications for medical marijuana was neurological in nature. Everything from MS to ALS to epilepsy to neuropathy to spinal cord injury, Huntington's disease, I could go on. And so we started a clinic at my institute, and I became the director of that. And since 2016, I have gathered over close to 10,000 patients who are actively in our program. And to my knowledge, it's probably the largest in the country. And not only am I seeing patients as their physician, not as somebody who certifies them, because there's a difference. We actually become the patient's physician and document 3-4 page notes, and then add the information about the use of medical marijuana when it comes to efficacy, dosing, ratios, what vehicle it's coming in, meaning is it a vape, is it a capsule, is it a tincture? And looking at the side effect profile, looking at efficacy rates, looking at standards of pain scales, and have all that documented in the patient's records, which is electronic records, which I can then pull out. So in the course of my, seeing patients, and we see about 110 patients a week, and I noticed that a lot of the African Americans are not coming back to see me. And, and I kind of looked the other way for about a year or two. Then I said to my staff, my research staff, I wanted you to pull a comparative study of African American use of medical marijuana with Caucasian. Now, unfortunately, Buffalo is a very segregated city. So by zip codes, I can figure out the level of pay and also the use of recreational marijuana and the use of medical marijuana and the efficacy rates. And I did a comparative study, which I like to present in California. But the bottom line is there's a huge discrepancy. And, over the last 50, 60 years, we know there's been a disproportionate racial influence on cannabis, either due to prosecution, persecution, and that has been due to the fact that we have racism in our institutions, in our judicial system, and the African Americans have been shortchanged all these years. And I won't get into the history, although in my lecture I may mention a little bit about why. But the bottom line is we thought that these medical programs, which is legal in 33 states in this country, is going to equal the playing field, allow individuals to use medical marijuana. And again, as I look at my numbers, there continues to be a racial discrepancy, and that needs to be addressed. And either the state or the federal government needs to subsidize what we're doing and equal the playing field for Caucasians and African Americans. Otherwise, we have a racial injustice when it comes to the use of these medical marijuana programs, which preferentially are being used by individuals, not because of race, but because of income.
Yeah.
So there's an income disparity. And I'm not going to call it racism, because the fact is that the income disparity in a segregated system does not allow African Americans to be able to afford the use of even medical marijuana, and are forced to use the cheaper model, which in my state is illegal, which is adult or recreational marijuana. So they may get certified, but they don't come back. In over 60% of my patients don't come back who are African Americans. Wow. Twice as much as what Caucasians are. So this is what my discussion is and what possibilities one can do. I'm basically bringing out statistics of my practice.
Right. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you're doing that work. I thank you so much for doing it and for noticing and for talking about it. So.
At the end of the day, as a physician, because I'm a practicing physician, at my age, you have to have a tremendous empathy to your patients. And when you see them suffering, and when you know there's a drug or a cannabinoid that actually improves their quality of life, and they're unable to do it, and have to go back into recreational smoking, which as an oncologist, you can imagine my opinion on smoking, period.
Yeah.
It's a shame, because, it's like having anything. You have the tools, you just can't use them.
Yeah.
So I'm hopefully that this will initiate a debate nationally and locally on how to bring a program that was initially felt to be beneficial for the population when it is not.
Yeah.
That has to be corrected, and there's means to correct that, but that'll have to be done at a political and state level.
Absolutely. In Thailand, the state hospital is using confiscated cannabis that's been cleared, checked for pesticides and parquat, making it into oil and giving it away at the state hospitals. That's how Thailand is working it.
Yeah, I would say that would make a lot of sense, but I think you and I know that that's not going to happen in this country. It could, but I don't think it will. The states have to make decisions. I think the states have the power to make decisions on how to equal the playing field. And they're going to have to bring out their thinking caps. Either either drive the cost of medical marijuana down, because every state that has approved recreational marijuana, the medical marijuana has taken a hit. And I'm not a believer that people who want medical marijuana want to get high.
Right.
I've been told this in dispensaries from California to Colorado, that people who want medical marijuana just want to get high. That is not true. And I say that because I have 10,000 patients, some of which are 103 years old. So I know for a fact that out of my 10,000 patients, less than 2% have euphoria, get buzzed.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a population of the 60 and above who have arthritis, who have irritable bowel syndrome, who have sleep disturbance, and they do not want to get high. They want to get better. So it's a quality of life issue. And we have an opportunity to improve the quality of life of our population, the population that may need it the most, the geriatric population, which is getting greater in numbers as we get older. So for that reason, something has to be done. Something has to be done at the state level and at the payer level too. I'm looking at working with payers to see what happens if a payer steps up and pays for 1 year's worth of cannabis, and look at the medical economics at 1 year. What happens at 12 months? Are the patients using less medication? Are the patients using less opioids? Are the patients going to ERs less often? So that type of science has to be done, because I promise you, based on my clinical experience and acumen, that patients are throwing away 2 or 4 or 5 medications, are coming off the opioids in today's world where we have an opioid epidemic with 130 patients dying every day. So we have to be very sensitive to the fact that there's a possibility to improve the medical economics. We just have to prove it, have to show it to the state, have to show it to the payers, and that's what I'm trying to do in New York State with Albany and payers in New York State to run a study with similar results. And we actually are right now sitting down with a specific payer.
That's really an incredible study that you're doing. I thank you so much for taking the time to do it with all the 10,000 patients that you have, to be able to also do that study. I know it's extra work, but you really are doing heroes work by helping move it forward.
You know who the real heroes are? First of all, the patients are the real heroes, because they've been suffering and they open up their minds and they come to us with faith, and it's been working extremely well. I'm as an oncologist, my research for years is brain cancer. You can imagine what I've seen over 30 years of treating patients with brain cancer. Yeah. So this is a new part of my life right now. But what I did in Albany, and I have to tell you, you could be critical of state government, but New York was rather receptive, is that I brought in, it's not just me, I have a group of nurse practitioners and PAs who are certifying patients and seeing patients regularly. This is my group, and they're wonderful. And New York State has allowed NPs and PAs to see patients, because many states, there's not enough physicians to go around. And you can't find them because they're not on websites. So I asked Albany to look at it and allow nurse practitioners and PA to certify patients after they take the appropriate, regulatory examinations. And they are. So I wish I could tell you that 10,000 my patients, it's my group. So we have a large cannabis clinic, and we're seeing 110 patients a week, and it's really has been endearing to us to see the response. But it's really a group effort. I'm as a doctor, as usual, I take the credit.
What percentage are older patients in your clinic?
So the study I did, and you can cross-reference my name with geriatric, was an interesting study that I presented at the American Academy of Neurology. And let me just say that the large international meetings that we have in neurology, and neurologists tend to be a relatively conservative group of individuals. They're not always open-minded, but for the first time in the history, we had a cannabis course where we had lecturers and we had over 400 people attending, and I presented 6 abstracts and that was in Philadelphia this year.
Wow.
And it was very successful. They invited me back for next year, and that meeting will be in Toronto. And so that's the American Academy of Neurology, AAN. You can look at their website. So my research included a geriatric group, and it was a simple study. I just told my staff, look, take everybody over the age of 75. And then I found over 300 patients, 75 to, this was 2 years ago, so I probably have more patients, 75 to 102. That person now is 103. And look at them, and look at A, does it work? B, what are the side effects? And then grade the side effects, serious, non-serious, and so on. And I just did an abstract, presented at the American Academy of Neurology. The media picked up on it from all over the world. It was everywhere from Europe to Australia, Israel, and the title was, not my title, was Cannabis Works in Grandma and Grandpa. And obviously that's an unprofessional media-based title, but the reality was these patients got 80% better. I just did serious side effects was basically there was not one serious side effect. Some people didn't like the taste. Some people got dizzy a little bit. I changed the dose. But the reality is it worked, and the side effects were minimal. And then begs the question, well, if you're over 65, 70, and you have aches and pains, and to my knowledge, as I'm getting older, I'm feeling aches and pains, that what population over the age of 65 does not benefit from medical marijuana? Because they don't want to get high, they want to feel better. Right. And one day I foresee, as you're taking your vitamin C and your vitamin D, that you'll be taking your vitamin cannabis because it makes you feel better. What 75-year-old doesn't sleep well? What 75-year-old doesn't have joint pain? Yeah. What 75 doesn't have anxiety related to the fact that they're getting older and they have that fear? So if you have a medication that's anxiolytic, anti-inflammatory, analgesic, and helps you sleep, 4 attributes, that's what I call a wonder drug. And then you look at side effects. So right now I'm looking at side effects when it comes to use of cannabinoids, when it comes to blood thinners. I think that's very important because if you're over the age of 65, let's be fair, most people either take aspirin, Flavix, or blood thinners. So I'm looking at studies to see if there's an interaction. And that's very important to do because there is a fear out there that it's going to interact with my drug. So these are the things that need to be done. And a lot of people are thinking about it. It just has to be done.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're looking at that side effect profile. It is no wonder that Big Pharma is not excited about cannabis. It seems like it affect their bottom line.
Yeah, I think the forces against the movement is twofold. One is the medical establishment. 9% of medical schools teach the curriculum of the endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome.
How do we get that changed?
Exactly what we're doing. I'm a professor at the university. I teach at the university. I teach at many universities, internationally and nationally. The word has to get out. You know, they don't have a choice. When you have 33 states that have approved medical marijuana, and that's over 70% of the population of this country.
Yeah.
You really don't have a choice. It's going to happen. It has to happen. For that to happen, you need science. You need good science. Yes, you need randomized studies. I have to tell you, I think a wonderful article in use of cannabinoids in the treatment of chronic migraine, which is one of the most disabling disorders in the world, according to the World Health Organization.
Yeah.
And I wrote the article. I think it's a tremendous benefit to the science of headaches and cannabinoids. And you won't believe the resistance I have. I'm publishing that article.
Wow.
I mean, I'm known in those circles. I'm not somebody who's naive. They know my name. And I have journals refusing to publish it. I'm on number 5 right now.
Wow.
And I haven't lost hope, and I won't, because that's, you know, we have to pursue justice, because it has to be published, and then people have to read it, and then it came out. They should have their own opinion after reading the article.
Right.
But not to publish it would be a crying shame, and we're not going to allow that. So this is the resistance I find with the establishment.
Yeah.
Now, the pharma is a different issue. I mean, look, at the end of the day, pharma's reputation is getting nailed and killed on opioids right now. I don't think they want to take up the fight to be against medical marijuana. They do it in indirect ways. But, you know, look, this could be done outside of pharma, but it has to be done properly. It has to be done in academic centers. It has to be done with good research trials. It has to be published in reputable journals, and that's my focus right now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good people around the country who are trying the same thing.
Sure.
You know, it begs the question, how should research be done at a national level? Unfortunately, you're already aware that Schedule I licensing is difficult to have, and when you do have it, is that research going to be compatible with the real-life medical marijuana? And the answer is no. And the people who are doing Schedule I research in cannabis, who are utilizing cannabis from facilities that are outdated, is just not appropriate. So state legislation has to open up research for cannabis of quality that should be within that state and should be allowed in facilities and institutes with exceptions to the Schedule I license to do prospective randomized studies. Once we have that, then you'll have research in every state, but it has to be done. And for that, we need the support of the community, support of our politicians.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, to change some legislation within the state.
Of course, the easiest thing would be if 45 takes it off the Schedule I of drugs, which could happen in this political climate. He does need
You never know. I hope you're right. I hope you're a visionary.
Take this in however we can get it, from 45, 46, whatever. I'll take it.
Yeah. Take the handcuffs off me. Let me go.
Absolutely.
Once I have that as a Schedule II drug, or a Schedule III, or it should be even more, as you know, Epidiolex is Schedule V.
Right.
Once we have that, I think things will move quite fast.
Definitely.
And you know what? Why shouldn't we be the pioneers of medical marijuana in the world?
100%.
Why wait for other countries to start doing their research?
Well,
Because,
Israel
you know,
is definitely the pioneer, right?
I mean, we've been pioneers in everything else. We should be here. And at your meeting, one of the reasons I'm attending your meeting is the excitement of meeting Raphael Mechler, who really is the grandfather of cannabis research. I'm looking, I've never met him, but you have other individuals of high quality at your meeting, Ethan Russo, for example. So I'm excited to meet my colleagues and learn from them and bounce things off them in regard to research going forward. So again, one of the reasons I'm flying for a few days over to California from beautiful Buffalo, New York, where the weather is sunny and there's no snow, which is a blessing. So.
I have one more question. I know you have such a wide variety of patients in your clinic. Tell me about your work with people living with dementia and their use of cannabis.
So, you know, the one thing we have to watch out for as professionals, as physicians, is that cannabis in general is not a panacea for the treatment of diseases per se. If you believe in the endocannabinoid system, there may be a deficiency in a lot of human beings with a lot of medical disorders, and the adjustment of that by the use of phytocannabinoids or plants makes sense. But to come out and say we have, despite the fact that CBD and THC, but especially CBD, is an antioxidant, neuroprotective, decreased glutamate levels, which helps with head trauma, all that is science. It makes sense. But unfortunately, we can't come out, and this is where companies get into trouble because they make statements. I'm going to cure your cancer. I'm going to cure Alzheimer's. So we use it in our dementia patients for sundowning, which is the agitation that occurs at night, the anxiety during the day. I don't think CBD causes any detriment to my dementia patients. I just can't stand here and say that THC, CBD, or the combination is a way to cure Alzheimer's disease, because that science is not there.
Sure.
And even though, I think
symptoms.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And those symptoms are real. Sleep disturbance, agitation, psychosis, depression. Now get to pain. As you know, pain fuels sleep disturbance. Pain fuels cognitive changes. So I think by treating their symptoms, do I see these patients improve? Unequivocally. We have a dementia center here, and I can tell you our patients use either CBD products, hemp-based, or medical marijuana, which is THC CBD ratios. And I tend to use higher CBD ratios for those populations, but we adjust accordingly. So I think, look, I mentioned to you, I can see anyone over the age of 65. As you may know, 50% of patients over the age of 80 have cognitive dementia of some sort.
Yeah.
So I can see patients using a neuroprotective agent as they've used vitamin E for the treatment of Parkinson's for decades.
Yeah.
So I can see right next to that a CBD product.
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
Yeah. Have you
And let the long-term studies over not 1 year, but 10 years, 20 years, let the long-term studies define the use of cannabinoids as a neuroprotective agent in diseases such as dementia or ALS or Parkinson's disease.
Yeah, like the patent says,
Yeah, well, somebody beat us to that.
Yeah, the U.S. Department of Health.
Yeah, I was just a little bit late for that one.
Yeah, well, let's all use it more often, right? So, cool.
Yeah, so I really think that the hemp-based, not many people have talked about the Farm Act of 2018 that was signed in December. It's kind of
call it the hemp.
But it's still a CBD product. It's still a CBD product, and it has efficacy.
Yeah.
It may be not. You may be the person that said you need to have THC with the CBD. I'm not going to argue that point. But there's some diseases you want really a CBD product.
Sure.
For example, CBD in itself, high dosages, is the drug of choice for epilepsy and schizophrenia.
Sure.
But those dosages are really much higher. So I would not. I embrace CBD products and embrace the hemp-based CBD products. I do believe that the full spectrum is the direction we should be going to, not just cannabinoids, but also including flavonoids and especially terpenes. But that's a different discussion.
Yeah. Well, I think that this emergence of hemp and cannabis medicine is going to help all of us look at plants in general more closely. Even maybe doctors are going to start learning about food. I don't know. It's a wild time.
Well, functional medicine is a new field of medicine. People are very excited about it. And I recently came back from Amsterdam on a brain-gut axis relationship.
Yes.
And I was there for 3 days in Amsterdam listening to everybody talk about probiotics and other ways to treat the depression, anxiety, dementia by treating the gut. And I stood up at the end. I remember distinctly stood up at the end and said, I thought this was a wonderful conference. 3 days, people talking about the brain gut, but nobody mentioned cannabinoids.
Yeah.
And I would like to see this in your next year's meeting. Yeah. And so it's interesting. This is in Europe, but the cannabinoids affect the gut, affect the brain. So I think that's a topic of functional medicine, where use of different nutritional supplements, probiotics, and cannabinoids may be efficacious. I'll tell you a lot. 76% of my patients come in here for some form of pain. And often I ask them when they come back, they download the data in the computer, and I ask them, so you're better? I said, yeah, I'm doing much better. I decreased my opioids by 50%. I'm less constipated, and so on. But I'll have to tell you, it's helped my irritable bowel syndrome immensely. And it's helped my GI symptoms immensely. So it's like an indirect, I wasn't focused on that, I was focused on the pain. But it's interesting how these cannabinoids really help gastrointestinal symptoms.
Sure. I think part of the reason why they help people living with dementia who aren't necessarily able to articulate all of their symptoms is because cannabis works so well on so many different things that you may or may not know that you're having a problem with.
I won't argue that point. I think there's a truth behind that. And you know, anybody I see, I think I sprinkle a little cannabinoid on them.
Good. That's great. Awesome, Dr. Mechtler. Thank you so much. This has been such an illuminating conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time with us.
My pleasure.
There's a poster presenter at CannMed that is going to be talking about the gut-brain cannabis connection. So I'm sure I'll see you there. And I look forward to connecting in person.
Are you going to be there?
I absolutely am. I'm going to be there both days, and we'll see you there.
Looking forward to see everyone. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Mechtler. Have a great day.
Have it. Same to you. Bye-bye.
Dr. Laszlo Mechtler, MD, Medical Director of Dent Neurologic Institute and presenter at CannMed. Great interview, Chel.
Thanks, babe.
Nicely done.
I'm impressed I was able to record it. And I was really stoked that I was able to switch it to the 2-shot there, because originally I was having technical difficulties, but I persevered, I persisted, and it worked out.
You did. It
Thanks
was great.
to you.
Well done, and now you know how to do Zoom interviews. Your media technology is expanding.
Yes, it's true.
But the content was absolutely great. Please, guys, share this show. Thumbs up before we sign off. We are going to sign off right now, guys. We're going to say goodnight to you all. The afterburn is not the same burn, but we're still going to be burning. We're headed to the CannMed 2019 reception in Pasadena. We've got invites, so we're going and we're going to check in. Maybe we'll see Dr. Mechtler. Maybe we'll see Dr. Meshalom. Maybe we'll see Dr. Barry, Dr. Mike. Oh, only prestigious, great doctors, big doctors, many doctors on Reefer Revolution.
All the doctors.
All the doctors.
All the smart doctors.
And it's just the beginning this week of many events. But we are heading out right now, guys, to the CannMed 2019 reception. We will check in. Make sure you subscribe. Get notifications for when we do go live, because we are going to go live. And wherever you're at, do what you do. And we'll see you later on tonight, and definitely next week at 4:20 on Sunday for Reefer Revolution Live, where we spark up, talk about marijuana in the mainstream media, the politics of pot, and cannabis care. We'll see you next time. Free the plant, free the people. Pot for peace.
Ciao.
Murderers keep murdering, the churches keep a-burning, the rapists keep a-raping, and the tide ain't turning. Uncle Sam, for all your power, things get worse every hour. It seems to me your energy's all wasted, chasing my friends and me. Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. The terrorists keep terrorizing, our leaders keep a-lying, the haters keep a-hating, and the planet's dying. Do what's proper, call off your dogs and your helicopters. The problems of society were not caused by my friends and me. So hey, Uncle Sam, Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. touch of Mother Nature. Never made nobody violent, never made nobody hate nobody or break nobody's peace. It's never been shown to be harmful. Don't you tell me no lies with your caffeine, codeine, nicotine eyes. The cannabis man is just recent, just since 1938 to legalize it, realize it. You made a big mistake. Hey, Uncle Sam, hey there, Uncle Sam. Leave us pot smokers alone, Uncle Sam. Leave us pot smokers alone, Uncle Sam. Leave us pot smokers alone. Leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, understand I love you, but leave me alone. Smokers alone. Leave us pot smokers alone.
This drug is dangerous. You cannot play with it. It's not funny. It's not something to laugh about. Good people don't smoke marijuana.
Yes, I'm all in. This is the time to go all in on cannabis.
Nobody who got in prison for marijuana, for example, immediately upon being released, they shouldn't be in there for that should be a misdemeanor. They should be out and their record should be expunged.
You can argue the pluses and minuses of marijuana, but marijuana ain't heroin. So we have to end that, and that's what I will do. As President of the United States, I believe we can do that through executive order, and I will do that.
Smoke weed every day.
But I want to express
Don't speak. Don't.
just a few things that I want to tell you. When we first met,
Don't speak. Please don't speak. Please don't speak. No. Go. Go, gentle Scorpio, go. Your Pisces wishes you every happy return.
Just one.
Don't speak.